Welcome to You Matter Most podcast. My name is Jake Goodman.
And my name is Zachary Daranowski.
I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And I live down under in Sydney, Australia.
We met on Instagram and we vibed instantly.
We share the same mission to destigmatize and normalize mental health.
On this podcast, we will be interviewing individuals who are shattering the stigma of mental health and pushing the culture in the right direction with vulnerability, relatability, and empowerment. We are stoked to start episode 3 with one of our favorite mental health advocates, Victoria Garrick.
Victoria is a former Division I volleyball player at USC, TED Talk speaker, social media influencer, and mental health advocate with a passion for body image advocacy. She has grown a community of over 250,000 on Instagram and over 600,000 on TikTok. Welcome to the podcast, Victoria.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, so Victoria, we I think you and I first met when we did the TikTok live on World Mental Health Day, but I think you were chatting with Zach a little bit before that. Anyway, it's an honor to meet you, and like we said in the bio, you are a former D1 volleyball player. I would love for you to walk us through your journey on, throughout your life. Were you always an athlete, and how did you become a D1 college volleyball player at USC, correct?
Yeah, so I grew up playing sports. I was a super athletic kid. I loved to be outdoors. And just by the time I got to high school, I was playing club volleyball and I wanted to, do better and make different club teams. And I just naturally stopped playing soccer and playing basketball and running track because volleyball started to kind of consume my life. And I really love that it was a very natural thing for me. I think a lot of athletes do have to make a decision at that young age. Okay, well, which one has more college opportunities? Which one makes more sense? Which one do I like more? I wasn't really torn. It just naturally was the one that I wanted to be playing. And then in terms of going to play volleyball at USC, I started visiting and talking to schools my sophomore year. And when I visited that school and met with the coach and stuff, I just fell in love. It just felt right. And that was kind of really where I wanted to go. My brother also played golf in the Pac-12 at UCLA. So I had grown up, watching the Pac-12 conference and seeing him. And I think that's what pulled me towards, those teams. And yeah, my junior year ended up getting an offer to walk on to the USC team. So I wasn't going to get a scholarship, but I was able to, have a spot on the team, which actually I've since going to school have found is really common. The majority of athletes are not on full rides, which I think is really important to know because of, and we'll get into this later, but just the commitment and the lifestyle of being a student athlete is so intense. And most of the players are not getting 4 years of school paid for. They're just doing it because they love sport. So yeah, that's how I got to USC, and I was super, super hyped to get there.
Wow. So yeah, I watched your TED Talk and we'll get to that in a second. It sounds like, you weren't this highly sought after athlete. They didn't come to you with a full ride and beg you to come. You had to fight tooth and nail to get to where you were. And you, in the TED Talk, you started your first game as a freshman, which I'm sure is something that you did not expect. At least, maybe they didn't expect it, maybe you did. But can you walk us through when you started experiencing some mental health issues?
Yeah, I quickly realized, what it would take to really be a part of that team at the Division I level. And I think like most things in life, we all have goals and we all have things we want to accomplish or we want to do. And we imagine that once we get there, it's just going to be smooth sailing. But what we often forget is like, once you do get to the top or you get to the place you want to be or the team you want to be on, you have to maintain. You have to be a part of that team every single day. And it was early wake ups. It was 5 hours of a practice block every single day. It was traveling twice a week, missing class, like playing against the best volleyball players in the United States. And so it was a lot at once. And that's really where my performance anxiety first started to develop, is just questioning, like, am I good enough to be here? Am I going to make a mistake? The team started off hot. We were like undefeated for the first 10 games and then the first 20 games, and we were getting like all this national hype because of not having lost. And so I think a lot of that too played into this idea that I didn't want to do anything wrong or make any mistakes. And that's when the performance anxiety developed. And at the same time, I started to struggle with my body image as well, because I was gaining weight, I was gaining muscle, I was eating more, I was just training more. And so it was total shock to my body and the way I approached food. So kind of the anxiety and the body image issues was what I was really grappling with freshman year. But at the same time, I thought, no one else seems to be struggling like this. And I don't want to be the one on this top team who's like, hey, I'm nervous, I can't sleep, I'm crying. Like, I thought I was just supposed to figure it out, be quiet, and go play. So that's why, that first year I really felt that stigma. I felt that it was weakness, and I didn't want to tell anyone about it.
That brings me to my next point too, in regards to like feeling alone and isolated. When you listen to your TED talk, the first thing you open up is saying is, I stayed up late to study. I had to get up early for practice. I was a few minutes late for practice. People had to then do running for me. And this whole ownership of it's all on me. And it's not just being a Division I athlete, it's being a student athlete. And like you said, from the body image, from the academics to the athletics, how did it just like accumulate together to a point that it was a breaking point, or did you notice that it was a gradual build of what was going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it started gradually. It was just like I'm definitely one of those people that just finds a way. And so I think I kept finding a way to get it done, to show up, to perform, to make it happen. And it kind of came at the cost of my mental health and well-being and happiness. And it was gradual. And, eventually things just kept getting worse and worse. And then by the time I was a sophomore, I had really ignored the anxiety and the body image issues for such a long time that I had now fallen into this lower state of depression. Like, I had to start seeing a therapist and start taking medicine. And that was just a complete 180 from the girl I was a year and a half ago, who came here so excited, ready to like take over the world, to now I was unable to get out of my bed. I did not look well. I wasn't myself, and I was now clinically depressed. And I think it was like me and my parents were just like, what has happened? So it really was gradual. And then it was just a shock of, you're so different than who you were before.
Wow. So this is something that is always interesting to me. Okay, you sought treatment, you were able to get into therapy, were able to get medication. That's amazing. So many people don't get that far for numerous reasons. The stigma prevents them from seeking treatment. Sometimes things improve on their own, although most of the time they don't. And so some people may not get to the point where they are seeking treatment and they're actually getting medication and therapy. Once you get that, once you start getting therapy, once you start getting medication, can you walk us through, one, did anybody know? Did you tell anybody? And if so, what were their reactions? And two, what started happening when you started therapy and you started getting on medication?
You're very right in saying that there's a lot of reasons that prevent people from getting those things. And I also think another factor of that is resources are just not accessible to everyone. And I was so lucky that I went to a school that was USC, and obviously they are an incredible institution, and they had therapists to give me for free and the medicine to give me for free. And I also think about like how many athletes I've met at different schools where I speak who get turned away from the health center or don't get acknowledged by their trainers or their coaches, whoever they say they're struggling with. So that in itself is a huge issue, is just, even if people want to get the help, sometimes they can't. And obviously that's something I know all three of us want to see change. And then in terms of your question for if, how that went. So my parents knew, I don't, it's so funny. Like, there's certain things I think back on and I don't remember specifics. And now that I'm kind of learning more about myself and like trauma and all those things, you wonder if you just like kind of block it out, or it was such a dark place in my life that for me to loosely tap into some of the little things, like I have to really go there. And I don't know, I can't really remember if I what happened with my parents. I know that my mom and dad knew I was going to therapy, because I remember my mom like wanted to talk to my therapist to just get the vibe of like how serious this was. And I know with my body image issues, I definitely opened up to my mom about that. That's one of the times I remember kind of telling her. And so, yeah, like my parents knew in that sophomore year, I would say the fall and the like spring time was not good. And that spring was actually my TED Talk. So when I gave that TED Talk, I was like just starting to heal. And even I watch it back now, and it's been like 2.5, 3 years. I'm still a public speaker. Like, and that talk I think was given with so much emotion. And I think that is great. And there's a time and place for that. And at that time and place, I felt like it was kind of like my cry for help, and especially a cry to help other people. But I was certainly like just beginning my healing. Like I just started taking medicine, which was hard for me to accept. I just started really learning tools and tricks from my therapist that I could apply to my life. And then even my junior year was hard. I felt like I was more experienced, but it was still difficult for me. And it wasn't until my senior year that I really felt like I weaned off my medicine. I didn't need to go to therapy once a week, that I really felt like I'd gotten control over my mental well-being in this lifestyle.
I think that's amazing. And that whole transition of, I was speaking to actually a therapist, this vulnerable confidence that you just give off, even in the TED Talk till now. And I think that's obviously evolved and you feel more comfortable and probably learned a lot about yourself. I really am interested in this next question in regards to the student athlete, like the climate. When you watch your video on your website, there was a point, like almost like an epiphany, you would say, where you go on Google late night and you're looking up someone like, was it depressed athletes or what to do, and you couldn't find anything. So your first inclination is like, as opposed to can I find anything, I need to create something so other students that go through the same thing, they don't experience that. And experience what? My question is, another part of the video that I thought was powerful was when the coaches would speak up and the next generation was speaking up and asking you really good questions about mental health. Do you find that that conversation around mental health has changed from a coaching, like administrative perspective? And if so, how?
It's definitely changing. It has changed tremendously from like my struggles in that TED Talk to now. And I'm not trying to draw a connection between my TED Talk and the changes in the world, because Simone Biles, Kevin Love, Michael Phelps, those people don't know who I am. But I do think it just goes to show that like I could not find anything sophomore year depressed looking it up. Like I could not find the Kevin Love Players Tribune article. There was no Michael Phelps. There was no Weight of Gold documentary yet. Like, and now here it's been 4 years. And I bet if that same person was Googling something, they would find just thousands of articles and stories about athletes who are struggling with mental health, which is phenomenal how fast that's happened. And I really think we've also seen that reflected in the majority of, hopefully, good administrations and athletic departments who are realizing that they can't just look past this anymore. And the other component is it's not just anxiety and depression and like the sad part about mental health that we need that help for. It's also like you want an athlete, you want players that compete at the highest level, execute under pressure, are clutch in intense moments. That's mental toughness. That's still your mindset and your mental performance. And the two of these things go hand in hand. So it's like if you want your team to be clutch and all those things I just described, we also have to make sure that their mental health and well-being is right. And so I think the mental component of sports is a huge thing that everyone is starting to now realize and prioritize.
Yeah, you nailed it. And this is what Zach and I talk about. And I'm sure you've seen this too, Victoria. And we kind of mentioned this a little bit when we met on the World Mental Health Day on TikTok. Because of you, because of Michael Phelps, because of everyone else that is out here sharing their story, that I just saw one recently. I'm sure you've seen it. I think his name Hayden Hurst, the Falcons football
Yeah,
player.
his story is incredible.
It's incredible, right? These are every day I turn on the news or I get on Instagram and I see another person has opened up about their mental health and another person from the biggest people you could imagine. It has changed the world and the way that so many people, especially the younger generation, are seeing mental health. And, you know, I hope And I believe and I do hope that people now that are just starting to feel anxious for the first time, just starting to feel depressed, and they don't know what's going on, like what am I feeling? What is this? And they Google and they start seeing all these resources out there, and they start seeing all these other people saying, yeah, I'm a professional basketball player, but I had panic attacks. Yeah, I'm a D1 volleyball player, but I have issues with body image. These kind of things, I hope and believe, are going to empower that generation to seek treatment and empower and advocate for themselves a little bit better than we had it. I hope. What do you think?
I definitely agree. I think the change has been tremendous and it's happened in such a short amount of time. Just considering many other things in our world and our history that have taken a lot longer. So I think it's great and it makes me really hopeful for that next generation of players.
That brings me to my next question. So actually, I think I met you through Voices of Hope, but I saw you first. I think Jazz Thornton reshared something, or she's like, "I love Victoria," or something. It's something in regards to you. And I went to your page, and then I loved it, and then I told Jake about it, and then the Voices of Hope thing came to be. I want to talk about social media because that's obviously a dominant presence you have, and obviously it's probably the stronger thing that you've been focusing on since maybe speaking isn't the engagements you can do like since I think March or April because of COVID. Can you speak a little bit about social media and how that's maybe impacted your own mental health and your journey on there?
Yeah, so the social media thing is so funny, especially when I talk to TikTok creators like yourself, because I've seen so many people like overnight just grow these huge platforms on TikTok, and rightfully so. Like they create good content, they deserve that exposure. Um, and then I look back on my story, and like for 3 years now, I've been grinding on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and I've still seen the benefit from TikTok. Like that has, I think, really taken my platforms from one level to the next, just because of that exposure of the algorithm and all the unique things offered on that app. But I started really trying to build a platform, my junior year of college. So it's been like 3 years now. And it happened once again. This is something I feel, or I guess, what was I saying this before? Oh, I said I'm trying to remember my words. I said something like naturally, very naturally, like I started to develop my mental health issues. It was similar to how my social media platform started growing. It was super organic. What happened was, so that same sophomore spring that I gave the TED talk, I was also kind of having like an existential crisis. That moment in your life where you're like, wait, we're all waking up every day to make money to die. Like, and you're just like, I can't believe this. This is sad and dark. And so I was really going through those nights in my bed. And I kind of was just like, Instagram is just so stupid. Like I was one of those people that was posting bikini pictures, and I looked like this typical blonde college girl who was only cared about looks and her body. And it was also causing me a lot of stress to try to upkeep and post pictures that were trying to convince people that I had a good life and I was pretty. And it was just very artificial. And that actually had a huge effect on my mental health as well. Like that's why I was so anxious and depressed, was I couldn't keep up with the highlight reel I saw every single day, nor the one I was literally faking to the world, because that's not how I felt. And I was pretending I felt a certain way. So that same sophomore year, I was like, screw it. I went off Instagram for like a month just to detox. Then I came back and I just did it in like I was like, no filters. I'm not going to care. I'm not going to edit. And I just started posting whatever I wanted. And I started using the hashtag real post. And that was just a joke to me at first. I was just like, hashtag real post. Like I was just thought I was kidding. And then the TED talk came out, and then people started coming to my page and messaging me and saying, oh, we saw this video and I relate. And I started to and then also people were like, we love these Instagram posts way more than the fake stuff you used to post. And I kind of had this other part of my brain click where I was like, okay, well, I have more to offer. It's clear people need to see a profile like this. So I'm just going to keep going, and maybe I'm going to put more thought into it, and I'm going to strategize it. And so that's kind of how the platform and social media presence started to take heat.
Zach and I can relate to that so much. And Zach, what is the equation that you came up with that you've been using on MD Motivator?
Yeah, so when I started social media, Victoria, almost 2 years ago, I started it when I was a former college dropout. I had like a 0.59 GPA, and I just put up my transcripts one day, my freshman year transcripts, hoping maybe my story would relate. So through that, I created a formula: vulnerability equals relatability equals empowerment. So I think I said before, the vulnerable confidence of you speaking and just being like the real post, and no Facetune, no filters, people connect with realness and they could feel that. So I think the authenticity is what probably captivated your audience. And I'll let Jake take the next question.
Yeah, I was just going to add, there was actually a study that just came out from Columbia Northwestern that literally proves that being authentic on social media is better for your mental health. It's a new study that just came out, and it's super cool to see that when you are yourself and you're real and you're authentic, you actually are happier. And I love how you said vulnerability plus relatability, because I think those two things do go hand in hand, because everyone in life has been sad. Not everyone in life has played volleyball at USC. So when I say that, that doesn't relate to everyone. But when I do admit that I'm not perfect and I struggle and I'm insecure, every single human has felt that at some point.
100%. And I know when I started on social media, my first post was, my name is Jacob and I'm a fourth year medical student. But before I got here, I failed many times. I was denied by 25 medical schools. I had to take the MCAT twice. I had to take the SAT 3 times in order for me to get to where I am now. That video allowed me to create the platform I have now because I was relatable, I was vulnerable, and I was telling the whole story. And what angered me when I was, and it sounds like we all kind of had this experience, is before we started our platforms, we would see just the highlight reels, whether it was ourselves or others. And when you break that pattern and you show people the reality of the situation, I saw one of your most recent TikToks. I loved it. It was you just eating Chick-fil-A to the, I don't know if I can curse on this, but the bad BITCH song.
I know.
I love that. I love that. So anyway, relatability equals vulnerability equals empowerment. And so you've grown the social media platform. It's around over 1 million people between TikTok, Instagram, and all your channels put together. Do you feel that, you know, that has had a negative impact at all on your mental health? Because trolls exist. I see them everywhere. They attack us at all angles. And, you know, throughout these 3 years, have you had negative and positive impacts on your mental health from this?
For the most part, it's been positive. Social media has really given me a voice, and it's a creative outlet. When I think about going on social media, I mean, I would say 15% of the time it's for enjoyment and for the uses that other people use it. The other 85, I'm so bad at math. The other 85% of the time, I'm just researching. I'm just consuming content like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, Zach, I think your page gives me so much inspiration, just the songs you use and the way you do things. Like, I'm always looking for the way creators tell their message to help inspire me to create. And I think mostly it's been positive, but I definitely, the thing I struggle with the most right now is comparison. You know, comparing people who are succeeding more than me or have done cooler things than me. And that sounds so stupid, because that is not the point, right? The point is that we're helping people, and that we're making change in one person's life. Doesn't matter if it's one or if it's a million, you know? And so I think one thing I really do constantly work on, and I'm not afraid to admit it, because it's not necessarily what I believe on paper, but it's those little thoughts that creep in of like, well, more, and you need to do better and cooler things, and you need to blah 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 this many views. And I know I always have to work back to like what the real purpose is. And so that's only one of the things I'd say I struggle with, and I really work hard on to keep in, you know, a good mindset. And then I think in terms of like that negative hate comments, I've actually been really lucky to not experience that. Like, I've never had someone just being a hater. I've definitely had experiences where people say negative things, but it's usually easy for me to like brush it off, because I really understand that if like I'm to the point in like my own healing where I see negativity from someone else and I just know it's really got nothing to do with me. So I don't usually take it personally. But one thing I do love about social media is like just the constant learning, you know, that you get from people, and just the way that you get pushed to grow because you do have people critiquing you. Like, I just started adding captions to all of my TikToks for those who are who are maybe deaf or have any hearing impairments, so that they can follow along and be a part of the content. And so, you know, I'm just constantly learning ways to make content that's more accessible, represents more people, doesn't offend people. I think that stuff's all important too.
think that's extremely important. And I think from my perspective, in regards to social media growth, it happened really fast. So it put this stress on me. The more I grew, the more I needed to put up more content, the more. This inevitable cycle of producing more and comparing myself to others. And I think that's the toxic side of it. The really positive side of it is like that TikTok live we do with the Voices of Hope, bringing these 10 strangers from around the world that just are so passionate about some topic together to want to inspire change. And I don't know about yourself, but when I left that live, I was so motivated and so inspired to really just not do better, but just do more. And just, it was a really, really positive. But I want to chat more about the TED Talk and the hidden opponent. And I know you talked about that TED Talk being almost a turning point, or that was the beginning of your recovery process. Can you speak a little bit more? First, how did the TED Talk come to be? Because we haven't chatted about how you got the TED Talk. And then secondly, were you aware of where you mentally were at that point, or is it only in retrospect that you recognize those things?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'll answer the second one first because the other one I know like back of my hand. I would say looking back, yeah, I definitely can see a girl who is still hurting. Even when I watch the talk, there's a lot of emotion, and I've since like started to work with a speaking coach and really fine tune, my keynotes and my delivery. And when I look back on that talk, you can see the hurt and the anger. And I think that is important. And I think that is part of the reason that TED Talk was successful, is because I was an athlete in that position at the time, like talking about how I felt. But looking back, I think it always shocks people when I say, yeah, that was sophomore year, and junior year I was still depressed, and junior year I took a mental health leave. So it's like, wait, but you gave this TED Talk and it was so empowering, and then the next year you were still struggling. And I'm like, yes, because nothing is a quick fix when it comes to your mental health. It's only an uphill climb, and maybe you get stronger throughout it, but it's never just going to be something that you check a box and you never have to deal with again. And then in terms of getting the TED Talk, it was crazy story. Once again, this is kind of like fate. I was a journalism student, so I loved storytelling. I loved reporting on athletes. At the time, I thought I wanted to report on like, sideline reporting. And then as I started to experience my own issues with mental health, I was like, wait, I'm so like not right. And the only thing that like they're reporting on is my stats, or if we won the game, not necessarily about me, the person. And of course, like I think that journalism is great, and it's what makes sports entertaining, and it involves the rest of the world to cheer people on. But I wanted to tell the stories about the athletes off the court, having nothing to do with their statistics or their stat sheet or whatnot. So I was getting ready to like find a way to share what I had been through, because I'm the kind of person where like once I realized that something is wrong, or there was like kind of an issue that I thought wasn't right, which was just the ridiculous overlook and ignorant, I guess what we would be, I guess it was just the way mental health was being overlooked and undervalued was absurd to me once I realized. And that's where I was like, nuh-uh, like this is not going on any longer. Like I'm going to share what I've been through so that other people don't have to. And then literally that same week, I had an email come through in my inbox that was like once in a lifetime opportunity, USC TED Talk. And it was like an application form for like all the students at the school. And I knew immediately, and when reading the email, like I want to talk about student athlete mental health. And I wasn't even on theme. Like there was a theme that was like tech and innovation. And I was like, screw the theme. I'm applying about mental health and athletes. And I literally applied, and then I got called back, and then I actually got cut. I got dropped. They told me there are already too many TED Talks about mental health. That was literally the feedback I received. And I was so bummed, because I was like, this is different. I was like, this is different. And then they ended up calling me back like the next night being like, actually, we want to see you one more time. So I guess like a few people on the committee did like my story, maybe a few others didn't, whatever the situation was. And then I ended up going that night and just, I don't know if I scared them into giving it to me, but I was basically like, you need to let me share this. Yeah. And so I got it, and I was thrilled. And that experience has without a doubt changed my life. I really have no idea where I'd be if I didn't give that TED Talk. And actually, Zach, you mentioned before the beginning of the talk where I talk about like my day and my life. Like, I'm like, you have to wake up at 6 a.m., you have to go to a lift. That was a real day in my life. And I actually wrote that in my notes page. Like on one of the mornings, I was just crying. I just was like, I'm going to share this someday. And so it was really cool pulling pieces of the talk that were actually things that I had written about before and really wanted to share.
That's incredible, Victoria. Something that I really value about you is, or look up to you about, is that you've taken um, things that you see wrong in society, or that maybe have wronged you or wronged others, and you convert that energy into objective change. And two of those things, which I would love for you to touch on now, are one, Real Pod, your podcast, and two, your nonprofit, The Hidden Opponent. Why and when did you start these? And can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, so I'll start with the hidden opponent. That was basically me realizing that there needed to be something bigger, like a larger community with a wider net where other athletes could share their stories, meet each other, and we could have like a community. And once I had spoke at these schools and I met all these athletes, and I just realized a lot of them are like, well, I want to share my story too. How did you get started? Or, well, no one at my school talks about it. How do I meet people? Like, whatever it was, I just realized if we could create a community and we could have ambassadors on different campuses and we could all have a Facebook group and we could connect. And then if people wanted to share their story and they didn't know where to start, we could say, well, here's an Instagram platform that we've created and we will elevate you and like help you share your story. That was really the purpose there. And I founded it last October. And since then, it's just grown tremendously. I have an awesome co-partner now. Her name's Leanne Pissarro, and she's fabulous. And we have hundreds of campus captains who are our ambassadors. And it's really been special to see how that's grown. And I'm excited to see how it continues to grow. And then with RealPod, basically what happened was I was doing my real posts on Instagram, and podcasts were just starting. Well, they weren't just starting, but it was kind of that point. It's still the point right now. Everyone feels like they have to have a podcast. I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, I should start a podcast. And I spent like weeks thinking of a name, and I couldn't think of anything that I thought felt right or sounded good. And then I was like, oh my God, Real Pod. I was like, I do the hashtag Real Post, and now we're going to take it to audio. So it's going to be the Real Pod. I actually started by calling it hashtag Real Pod, and then I dropped the hashtag because we grow and we learn that was stupid. So now it's just called Real Pod, and it's been like about a year and a half of the show, and I really enjoy it. And it centers around bringing people on who kind of pull back the curtain and reveal the dark and ugly and great and beautiful things that they're going through and that we all go through.
Hey, Victoria, for our last question here, it's a two-part question. The question was, what's the number one piece of advice you have for student athletes in regard to mental health? But I want to expand that a little farther and ask you, because I know you've spoken to thousands of students. First, what's the most common question that you get either during your talk or after your talk when you're speaking one-on-one with these athletes? And then what's the number one piece of advice that you like to give?
There's like a handful of questions I always get, but I would say one of the biggest questions I get is probably, I'd say the two biggest I get are like, one, how do you confront or talk to someone who you think is struggling? I think there's so many people who have loved ones or teammates or friends or family that they're worried about and they don't know how to approach that situation. And then two, I think how to tell someone that you are struggling. So it's interesting how it's always about communicating your feelings. And the second one is usually like, how do I tell my coach, or what do I say? Because mental health shouldn't be this way, but it does feel like something you have to justify, you have to prove. You can't just say, oh, I'm depressed. People are like, well, are you crying? Are you doing this? They want to see a physical manifestation of this invisible injury, and it's not always there, the same way that they could see your ankle is broken. So, I think that's something people will struggle with a lot as well.
Physical manifestation of an invisible injury. I really want y'all listening to hear that, because that represents mental health in its entirety right there. And that is what we are fighting for, all of us in our own ways, and everyone listening that's passionate about advocating for mental health. That's what it's all about. Victoria, thank you so much for coming out today. We look up to you. We value everything you do on social media and the world of sports. We are absolutely honored to have you on today. And I would love for you to let everyone listening know where they can find you and where they can support you.
Thanks. I had such a great time speaking with you both. It's so cool that you guys connected and now, you do this together. People can keep up with me on Instagram at Victoria Garrick. And then through there, they'll probably find everything else. And then my podcast is called Real Pod, which can be streamed everywhere.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Yes, thank you so much,
both.
Victoria.